cloaked in darkness. Pluto is a mystery. Our best images are nothing more than a blur. And many scientists are arguing over whether it's even a planet.
When we fly our spaceship to Pluto, we will arrive at a round world.
I'm able to use the word world, if you like, but planet?
The scientific debate over Pluto has even caused a media frenzy.
I'm sorry, I thought planets might be one of the constants in life.
Pluto lovers of America have taken to the streets. What is Pluto? A new mission to the far reaches of the solar system promises to answer this question and more.
It's true first-time exploration. Pluto is going to be completely revealed in all of its glory.
Join me, Neil deGrasse Tyson, on a journey to explore America's favorite planet.
Hi!
And find out why some people are blaming Pluto's problems on me.
So how do you feel about Pluto, Dr. Tyson?
These are the Pluto Files. Next on Nova.
Major funding for Nova is provided by the following.
For more than 75 years, the great stage of our solar system had a familiar cast of characters. 9 players in all. We even memorized their names. Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars, the rocky planets. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, those gas giants. And all the way out to the very edge of our solar system, perhaps the most popular player of all, a lonely little misfit. Planet Pluto. But recently, Pluto lost its starring role. And some folks are blaming that on me. I, Neil deGrasse Tyson, director of the Hayden Planetarium in New York City, have been accused of being a Pluto hater. Back in 2000, when my colleagues and I were designing this place, instead of exhibiting Pluto here with planets like Earth and Mars, or up there with giants like Jupiter and Saturn, we decided to boldly go where no planetarium had gone before and put Pluto far, far away, all the way downstairs, with a group of newly discovered icy objects in the outer solar system. If you look hard enough, you can find it, right here. Little did I know how much this decision would change my life. My troubles began with the astute observation of one young visitor.
I can't find Pluto.
Who, just my luck, was overheard by an off-duty journalist from the New York Times. He decides this is a great story, so he calls his Times colleague, science writer Kenneth Chang. And he's shocked.
Well, I was looking for Pluto, I couldn't find it. And you look everywhere, you see 8 planets, not 9.
A few days later, Chang's story hits the front page, right beneath George W.'s inauguration. The headline reads, "Pluto's not a planet? Only in New York." I received angry emails and tons of letters, especially from pissed-off third graders.
Dear Natural History Museum, Pluto is my favorite planet.
Why can't Pluto be a planet? Please write back, but not in cursive because I can't read in cursive.
I thought, oh my gosh, kids will probably go to this exhibit and cry because Pluto's no longer a planet.
Could it be the final indignity for the farthest and smallest planet on our solar system?
Our exhibit had stirred up a media frenzy.
Pluto was, since 1930, a planet. He had stature, he had friends. You come along and say,
Neil deGrasse Tyson, you have left a void in the universe as big as Pluto.
I never wanted to kick Pluto out of the solar system. I just wanted to group it with its icy brethren.
You saying Pluto should be with its own kind, separate but equal?
Yeah, I guess that comes out that way, doesn't it?
Neil deGrasse Tyson has betrayed us.
He has thrown his weight around a little bit too much. He's not the boss of the solar system. He's not the boss of me.
If Neptune or Mercury had been reclassified, I don't think anybody would have cared. But the fact that it happened to Pluto seems to make all the difference. Pluto has a remarkable grip on the hearts and minds of the American public and the press. Even my colleagues in astrophysics are still arguing over what to do with Pluto. And I don't really know why. But I'm determined to find out. This is the story of my journey. These are the Pluto Files. My first stop took me to Cambridge, Massachusetts. A visit to the hallowed halls of Harvard just might help me make sense of this Pluto problem. Welcome to the Harvard University football field. I brought a few props along with me, much to the surprise of my colleagues. Astrophysicist Brian Marsden doesn't think Pluto is a planet, while planetary scientist Mark Sykes thinks it definitely is. And the esteemed historian of science, Owen Gingerich, is looking for the middle ground.
Okay, Neil, what are we doing here?
We're making a scale model of the solar system right here on this playing field.
Okay.
So grab one of these and let's do it. To evaluate Pluto's planetary status, we need to take a closer look at how it compares with the heavy hitters on the solar system team. The planets are millions, even billions of miles apart. So this scale model can't accurately depict their distance from one another, but it can show their relative size. If this 8-foot balloon represents our sun, how does Pluto size up against the rest of the team? Let's find out. Mark, first up.
Mercury.
Mercury, represented by a bead, in correct size relative to the sun. Here we go. Minuscule Mercury may be small, but its diameter is still twice as big as puny Pluto's. Next up, Venus. You'll have the honor.
Thank you, thank you.
Venus, represented by this tiny rubber ball, has a diameter 5 times as big as Pluto.
Earth.
Earth. Earth, the big blue marble, is 6 times as wide as Pluto. Earth and Venus were about 1 inch. Mars would be about 1/2 inch, one of the sizes of these gumdrops relative to the sun. But it still trounces Pluto 3-1.
Jupiter.
Jupiter.
King of the planets.
King of the planets, you have the honor.
There you go.
All right. The largest planet, King Jupiter, represented by a schoolyard kickball, is a whopping 62 times as wide as Pipsqueak Pluto.
Saturn.
Saturn, the size of a bowling ball relative to the sun. Pluto doesn't fare much better against my favorite planet, Saturn, or its next-door neighbor.
Uranus.
Uranus, represented by a bocce ball. You ever play bocce?
No, I've never played bocce.
Neither have I. It would take 22 Plutos on a chain to equal the diameter of 1 Uranus. Croquet, anyone? What do you have now?
Neptune.
Neptune, why don't you have the honors? Big Blue Neptune is 21 times as wide as Pluto. Last and least,
and not least,
we have Pluto, represented by a ball bearing removed from a roller skate.
Sometimes the most valuable things are in the smallest packages. There you go. Excellent.
Pluto. Pluto's diameter is just under 1,500 miles. In fact, if it ever decided to visit America, it would stretch only from California to Kansas. No matter how you look at it, Pluto makes a scrawny little planet. Pluto's really puny, right? Yes. But so is Mercury.
Well, Pluto's a lot punier.
A lot punier.
1/20th the mass of Mercury.
Mercury, that's
less than the mass of the moon.
Touchdown right there. Okay. If we were to keep score of Pluto's oddball traits versus its planet-like characteristics, how would it add up? Brian thinks Pluto's puny size disqualifies it from the planet team. So he gives 1 touchdown, and of course the extra point, to Pluto the oddball.
This is ridiculous. You know,
it's not ridiculous.
No,
Mark
it is ridiculous
disagrees. For him, size is less important than shape. Pluto, like every player on our planet team, is round and not potato-shaped like nearly all asteroids. This sequence of images taken by the Hubble Space Telescope shows Pluto as a sphere with a textured surface.
When we fly our spaceship to Pluto, we will arrive at a round world that has an atmosphere, that has bright and dark areas on the surface, and it will look much more like objects we call planets than these little irregular inert objects that we call asteroids.
So, roundness, you give it a full touchdown?
Yeah.
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns! But then again, we all know Pluto's got this really weird orbit. First of all, it's tipped. The most tipped orbit. What's that worth to you?
Not too much.
Not too much. Field goal. Not quite a touchdown. All right.
Yeah, that isn't really the problem. I think the problem was crossing the orbit of Neptune.
Pluto's orbit isn't just tipped. It's highly elliptical. Not nearly circular like other planets. Which actually forces Pluto to cross the orbit of another planet. That's bad.
That is really bad.
Nobody else does that. There you go. Touchdown right there. Another 7 points for the oddball team. One way you might define a planet is that it ought to have a moon, but of course Mercury and Venus don't have moons. And guess what? Tiny little Pluto does. In fact, it has 3. One of those moons, Charon, is so large compared with Pluto that they both orbit a point in space in between them. Which might make you wonder, which one is the planet?
The idea of planets orbiting planets isn't really so foreign. We see many double stars out there, and we see galaxies orbiting galaxies.
The solar system is such a complicated place. It's very important to understand there is this richness out there.
So Brian, if we go there and we find that Pluto has mountains or craters or an atmosphere, it's got world properties that match other objects we're happy to call planets.
Well, I'm able to use the word world, if you like, but planet?
So then, what is Pluto? 4 billion miles from the Sun, our best images of Pluto and its moons are nothing more than a blur. By analyzing the light reflected from Pluto's surface, planetary scientists think that a day on Pluto might look like this. An icy, frosty winter's night in the Arctic. The Sun, a tiny pinpoint in a pitch-black sky. Wispy clouds and fog visible on the horizon. The temperature? About 300 degrees, below zero. No spacecraft has yet visited Pluto. Until one does, it will remain a mystery.
No.
Both of you are wrong. Both of you are wrong. And no scoreboard today is going to change that. It was time for me to take a closer look at why an oddball like Pluto was considered a planet in the first place. It's a tale that begins back in 1894, when a New England aristocrat by the name of Percival Lowell built a private observatory near Flagstaff, Arizona, with one goal in mind: to find life on Mars. After years of searching in vain, Lowell turned his attention to an unsolved mystery: the hunt for a distant planet whose gravity seemed to be causing disturbances in Neptune's orbit. He called this hypothetical object Planet X. Lowell spent the rest of his life trying to find it, but never did. After his death, the task was given to the unlikeliest of planet hunters, a self-educated farm boy who attended a one-room schoolhouse. Clyde Tombaugh's first job in astronomy included cleaning telescopes and sweeping up at the Lowell Observatory. He spent the rest of his time searching for the mysterious Planet X. Every few nights, he placed a photosensitive glass plate on the telescope, securing it so it would not shift. Then he exposed the plate for 2 hours to the universe. During that time, the motorized telescope slowly moved to compensate for Earth's rotation. Several days later, he'd retrace his steps, taking pictures of the same section of the sky he had photographed earlier. Then, using an ingenious device called a blink comparator, Clyde Tombaugh aligned the two images to carefully examine their differences. The blink comparator enabled him to shift back and forth, searching for the subtlest of changes. Although the human eye is good at spotting differences, finding a dim celestial object billions of miles away was a daunting task. After searching for almost a year, a determined Clyde finally found a tiny dot slowly moving across the night sky. Can you see it? Here it is. A month later, the Lowell Observatory proudly announced that a young assistant had fulfilled Percival Lowell's dream. Clyde Tombaugh had finally found Planet X. The day after the announcement, the news hit the front page of the New York Times. Soon, the discovery was heralded worldwide. But the new planet needed a name. Across the Atlantic, an 11-year-old English schoolgirl would come up with one. On March 14, 1930, Venetia Burney's grandfather, a librarian at Oxford, was reading the morning newspaper and came across the story.
An American has just discovered a new planet. I wonder what they'll call it.
Venetia had just finished studying the Roman gods and jumped at the opportunity to name it after the god of the underworld.
They could call it Pluto.
Pluto? Perhaps. Yes.
Her grandfather thought that was a splendid idea, so he wrote a note to the Lowell Observatory. The director at Lowell liked it, especially because Pluto's official symbol would be the overlapping letters P and L, the initials of the observatory's long-gone founder, the man who started the search for Planet X, Percival Lowell. For most Americans, the name Pluto didn't exactly conjure up affection. It was associated with a well-known laxative called Pluto Water, a popular product that promised relief from constipation in 30 minutes to 2 hours. Its slogan, "When nature won't, Pluto will." But the name would soon get a makeover. And it would come from a young animator by the name of Walt Disney. Shortly after Planet Pluto was discovered, the fledgling Disney Brothers studio came up with a new character, a playful bloodhound named Pluto the Pup. Walt probably wasn't thinking about constipation when he named Mickey's new pal back in 1931. My journey would lead me south to a magical place to meet with a celebrity on a tight schedule.
Pluto, hey! It's great to see you.
Thanks for making time for this. Can we pose for a picture?
Yeah.
Was Walt thinking planet when he gave his pup a name? Maybe Roy Patrick Disney, Walt's great-nephew, can help answer this question.
I wonder whether Walt jumped on the opportunity to name this new character after this new cosmic object. Is there any evidence for that in the archives?
There's no direct evidence. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence. I think it's fate. I don't think it's an accident.
You feel deep inside that Walt was thinking of the planet.
Yes. He was fascinated with space and space exploration, and Walt did 4 TV shows about space. And all of them made space exploration and science accessible to kids, including myself.
When he did his Man in Space series,
in 1956-57, America wasn't committed to a space program. Well, I know for a fact that many people who wound up working at NASA were inspired to do so by watching those television shows. He made learning fun.
I am certain Pluto the dog added some kind of warm and fuzzy feeling for this cosmic object. And cosmic objects don't normally trigger warm and fuzzy feelings. Pluto, have you ever looked through a telescope before? No! I brought one! Isn't it cool? No, it's daytime, so you can't see much, but let me show you how it works. What do you think of that? Oh, did you see something? You did? Here, check it. Whether or not Walt was thinking about the cosmos when he named his dog doesn't really matter. Good boy. Good dog. The seeds were sown for the tiniest of planets to get the kind of attention no other planet had. All because of this lovable pup. But I shouldn't give credit to the dog alone. Next stop on my journey? Streator, Illinois. The hometown of Clyde Tombaugh. They love him so much, Main Street is named after him. There's a mural in the center of town that compares his discovery of Pluto with the accomplishments of Copernicus and Galileo. His life is chronicled at the local historical society, where one of his homemade telescopes is on display. There's even a plaque dedicated to him in front of City Hall. Clyde is a local hero. Just about everyone around here can tell you his life story.
Next victim, customer base. How you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah.
Right now I'm on a pilgrimage, actually, to try to understand Clyde Tombaugh.
Clyde Tombaugh.
Yeah.
Well, he's from Streator. He discovered Pluto.
That's what I heard.
Well, we're very proud of him.
Yeah.
Very proud of him, what he did.
And you learned about him in high school? Oh, no, elementary school.
3rd grade, maybe?
Because that's when most people first learn about the planets, right? And then, so his name comes up, and you learn he's a local guy.
Yeah, and Streator boy makes good, so to speak. And back in 3rd grade, I thought, wow, that's astounding from Streator.
So you feel pride.
Pluto.
You feel some pride.
Oh, you bet. Always did. Always had something to point to as far as, look at there. That guy, he discovered Pluto. He's from our area.
Walt Disney named a dog after him.
There you go. That's true.
So how do you feel about Pluto, Dr. Tyson?
In the eyes of the townfolk of Streator, Illinois, Tombaugh's discovery is not only part of their history, it's a piece of American history, as well as world history. It was the ancient Greeks who classified what we call the Moon, the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn as planetes, which means the wanderers in English. They imagined Earth as a hub around which these planets revolved. In 1543, the Polish astronomer Nicholas Copernicus published his revolutionary idea that the Sun did not circle Earth, but instead, Earth and its lone moon circles the Sun, along with the rest of the planets. By the 17th century, the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei discovered Jupiter's 4 largest moons. Meanwhile, Dutchman Christian Huygens identified Saturn's rings and discovered Titan, its largest moon. Italian astronomer Giovanni Cassini one-upped him when he discovered 4 more. In the 18th century, Englishman William Herschel discovered Uranus, although he originally called it the Georgian star, after his king, George III. Can you imagine a planet named George? The British and French are still fighting over who deserves the credit for predicting the location of Neptune. Some give the honor to John Couch Adams, while others say Urbain Le Verrier deserves it. But there's no doubt that German astronomer Johann Gottfried Galle found it. The discovery of Pluto finally added an American, Clyde Tombaugh, to this short but esteemed list of planet hunters. So the folks in Streator, Illinois told me that in New Mexico there's still some Tombaughs there. That's where Clyde moved after discovering Pluto. Clyde's no longer with us, but his 97-year-old widow and both his son and daughter still live there. So I decided I had to check it out.
Whoa.
That's a lot of Tombos.
How many of you are there? Hello, everyone.
Hi. Annette Tombaugh.
Annette, a pleasure.
I'm Clyde's daughter.
What an honor. My gosh.
And this is my brother.
Neil Al Tombaugh. I'm Clyde's son.
Al, pleasure.
And this is my mother, Patricia Tombaugh. This is Clyde's wife.
It is an honor. Hello.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, well, that could be, I don't know what that means. So tell me about Clyde as a person.
He was the oldest of 6 children, so he was born to help on the farm. But he did not want to be a farmer.
He had not had the opportunity to go to college.
So what you're saying is that he discovered Pluto without ever having yet gone to college?
No, he was straight off the farm.
Lowell Observatory wanted somebody they didn't have to pay very much to do this job. What do you think they pay you for finding a planet?
After discovering Pluto, he got a college scholarship, which he would not have otherwise had. And, of course, he was supposed to be the big hero, but he didn't feel like the big hero.
Dad was a little embarrassed about the fame. He didn't like the limelight.
He's humble, so...
Absolutely.
Yeah, so, what was he like just as a dad? Was he like a weird dad, or did you think all dads were like that?
No, I knew he was very different. One of the things, we did have his grinding barrel to make telescopes in the kitchen.
This is the barrel that grinds glass into the shape of a mirror.
Yes, in the kitchen. How Mother ever put up with that, I don't know. We had grinding material in our food, and Mother's trying to cook around this situation. Well, finally she made Daddy move out of the kitchen and he got a shop.
That's good. You mean to tell me you have some of Clyde's original telescopes here? Whoa. These are his original telescopes.
Original telescopes built by my dad.
Very handmade.
Built out of old farm machinery, car parts, and whatever he could find. We'll just push it out here.
Help you push? All right.
You bet.
So, Hal, I don't recognize any hardware on this at all.
The tube itself is probably part of an old grain elevator.
And how about the base?
Well, the base is an old cream separator. The axle is off an early model Buick.
So there's a Buick out there now without an axle?
Without an axle. This counterweight was probably a flywheel from an early piece of farm equipment, maybe even steam-powered, we're not sure.
And I see a Coke can. I love this. So we got the open end of the telescope at the top.
Right.
And light comes down, reflects off the curved mirror, and light reflects back and comes to an eyepiece under that Coke can.
And if we wiggle this Coke can a little bit like this,
there you go.
There's the eyepiece. We're ready to go.
There it is. This isn't the only telescope I see back here.
Oh, there's a couple others. Let me pull this one out for you.
Okay. This has got to be the most homemade looking telescope I have ever seen. Is this a lawnmower?
That is a lawnmower base. This is what the family has called the grazer gazer. He looked at this and said, it's got wheels, it's got a handle. We need to put a telescope on that so I can push it around.
How to make a portable telescope?
Absolutely. He built it strictly on a utilitarian base out of what he had, which was thin plywood and miscellaneous pieces of wood.
This is insane. This just rotates.
Exactly.
What impresses me is that he didn't care what this thing looked like as long as the image of the universe came out sharp.
Right. Aesthetics didn't mean a whole lot.
On my way out of town, I stopped at a local church where there's a tribute to Clyde Tombaugh. A stained glass window that celebrates his life. How many scientists have stained glass windows of them? It's more than just a celebration of his discovery. A celebration of his life, overcoming obstacles that would keep most people down.
To me, that's the message here. After discovering Pluto, Clyde taught astronomy and searched for another planet in the far reaches of the solar system. But as hard as he and other astronomers looked, and they looked hard, nobody found anything. Most abandoned the search, assuming there was nothing left to find. But a few simply couldn't accept the prevailing view that the solar system ended with Pluto. I headed out to California to share a burger with two colleagues who were convinced there was something else out there.
Foods are coming.
Mike Brown and David Jewett.
Let's try to grab that.
Back in the 1980s, David started a search that would put Pluto in a new perspective. So you start looking in the outer solar system, that's kind of crazy because everyone knew the solar system ended at Pluto.
It's a little crazy, but, you know, the flip side is it didn't seem reasonable, it seemed peculiar that the outer solar system would be this really, really empty place compared to the inner solar system, which we already knew was full of planets and comets and asteroids and all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's got to end somewhere. Why not Pluto?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but maybe not.
Despite what felt like impossible odds, David teamed up with Jane Liu, then a graduate student, and they started a search that would take a lot longer than either one of them expected.
Why did it take so long? It was a matter of technology catching up with the problem.
While it's easy to see distant stars because they radiate their own light, other celestial bodies are much harder to see. That's because light has to travel all the way from our sun to the object, reflect off its surface, and then make the long journey back to Earth. By that time, it's barely visible. David and Jane hoped that advances in digital detectors, now standard in today's cameras, would help them see a whole lot more. That is, if there's anything out there to discover. In 1992, after searching for 5 years, they finally found something.
Here is the set of discovery images for the first object. Obviously, it's the thing with a circle around it. It didn't have a circle around it when we discovered it, but it does now. So you can see this object drifting from this picture to this one to this one. It's drifting slowly to the left, whereas most of the other objects are fixed, stationary bodies in the background.
When they found several more of these slowly moving objects, David and Jane could finally declare that Pluto is not alone. It's part of a region of the solar system never before seen. David named it the Kuiper Belt, after the astronomer who proposed its existence in the 1950s. Billions of miles wide, the Kuiper Belt is chock full of icy objects in wide orbits around the distant sun. They're the leftovers from the solar system's formation. We theorize that more than 4 billion years ago, our solar system consisted of bits and pieces of debris, colliding and sticking together into larger and larger chunks. Eventually, these chunks got big enough for gravity to pull them into a nice round shape, forming planets. And as the planets got larger and larger, their gravity vacuumed up nearly all the objects in their path. And frankly, many of my colleagues weren't ready to mess with America's favorite planet. We all knew Pluto was an icy object, just like everything else in the Kuiper Belt, but it was still the largest one in the neighborhood. That is, until my other dinner companion, Mike Brown, came into the picture.
I had just finished my PhD, and I was looking for something new to move into, and this seemed like the most obvious thing that anyone could start working on. This was an entirely new area of the solar system to go study, so it was very exciting.
Mike set his sights on doing something really big, finding a Kuiper Belt object larger than Pluto.
I was determined that there still must be something out there. I had caught the bug of finding it.
At the Palomar Observatory in California, Mike had access to the largest digital camera on Earth. The images were uploaded to Mike's computer, where he analyzed them every morning. With technology on his side, the discoveries just kept on coming.
We found Quaoar, which is an object out in the Kuiper Belt, but it's about half the size of Pluto. The next year we found something about 3/4 the size of Pluto, and in the following year we found this thing, and it was so bright. And also moving so slowly because it was so far away. I looked at it and I thought, this can't be right.
If it's that bright and moving that slowly, it's the furthest thing we've ever found. And it's the biggest thing we've ever found. It must be quite big, certainly bigger than Pluto, and that's crazy.
But it wasn't crazy.
On the day that we publicly announced the discovery, I had to make a decision what we were going to call it. Is it a planet? Is it not a planet? Is it the 10th planet? Finally, I had to say, okay, it's the 10th planet. Fine.
It's the 10th planet.
And I will tell you, when everybody kept on calling me, congratulating me for discovering the 10th planet, I felt fraudulent the entire day.
Why?
William Herschel pointed his telescope in the sky and found Uranus. Uranus is a major part of the solar system, and he found it. That is a pretty big deal. I discovered a little ice ball out on the fringe, and it just didn't seem like the same magnitude of a discovery. And I had been struggling with this for years. Like, what do you do when you finally find one bigger than Pluto? I did not believe that astronomers had the guts to ever demote Pluto, because it's just too publicly painful.
And if tiny Pluto was a planet, shouldn't Mike's discovery be one too? So he forged ahead, ultimately selecting a clever name for his discovery. Eris, the Greek goddess of discord and strife. Eris instilled jealousy and envy among men, driving them to battle. Mike's choice perfectly captured the destabilizing effect Eris was destined to have on Pluto, although he couldn't have guessed what was about to happen next. For the past century, the IAU, the International Astronomical Union, has been in charge of naming celestial objects. But it couldn't approve the name of Mike's discovery without knowing if it was a Kuiper Belt object or the 10th planet. This posed a problem because the word planet had not been formally defined since ancient Greece. Clearly, our knowledge of the solar system has expanded since then. So committees were assembled to come up with a new definition, the last of which was headed by my friend from Harvard, Owen Gingerich.
So what we proposed was that planets should be round and going around the sun.
So massive enough for the gravity to shape them into a nice round form, okay?
That's right.
Under this definition, Pluto would remain a planet. Mike Brown's discovery would be one too. And as new discoveries are made in the outer solar system, the planet count could go up.
We realized that doing this would bring scores of planets
into the accounting of planets in the solar system.
That's right.
But when the definition was proposed in Prague at the 2006 IAU conference, many scientists were dead set against it. A rebellion was brewing, and things were getting ugly. But just to clarify, your original suggestion got overturned within days.
Our recommendations were rather pushed to the side, and a new kind of definition came about in the final voting at the union meeting.
A new definition that included the following line: a planet must clear the neighborhood around its orbit. Pluto travels in a crowded neighborhood, littered with thousands of Kuiper Belt objects. It's simply not massive enough to clear them out of the way.
And the definition that the IAU came up with, 8 major things which dominate the solar system are planets. They're all big, they go in circular orbits in one disk around the sun, and everything else is on these other crazy orbits, much smaller. Those are not planets. That concept is a rock-solid concept.
And when this new definition went to a vote of the members present, it was a slam dunk. After 76 years, Pluto was no longer a planet.
I'm sorry, I thought planets might be one of the constants in life. But scientists just love change more than anything else. I'm sorry, that's not change I can believe in.
The whole underpinnings of what we understand as science. Is gravity real, or do we just have sticky stuff on our shoes? I mean, the whole thing. What are we doing at that point?
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that that was the vote that happened. But when that vote happened, I knew exactly what was going to happen next.
Supporters of Pluto are speaking out, trying to help it regain planet status.
Rock on Pluto, you'll always be a planet to me.
Pluto lovers of America did not take the IAU decision lightly. At New Mexico State, where Clyde Tombaugh had taught, students took to the streets.
No, Pluto! Pluto forever!
The New Mexico legislature declared Pluto was still a planet within state borders.
No matter what it says on the chart, you'll always be a planet in my heart. Rock on Pluto.
And Illinois soon followed, spurred on by efforts led by the concerned citizens of Streator. So I've got in my hand this legislation passed by the 96th General Assembly here in the state of Illinois.
Yes.
No one's got a problem with declaring March 13th Pluto Day, the anniversary of Clyde Tombaugh announcing the discovery. Who could argue that? It's this part of the resolution that says when Pluto passes overhead of Illinois' night skies, that it be reestablished with full planetary status. That's audacious. That's saying, forget the scientists. This is Illinois.
Yeah. This is Streator.
And don't mess with Streator.
Yeah, there you go.
Back at the barber shop, the guys made it clear where they stand.
I still believe it's a planet. They can't make me think any different.
But next door at the country cupboard, locals questioned the decision.
I was very disappointed. And not being able
in
to...
the result or how they got the result?
Both.
Both.
You can't change scientific fact or definition with a hand count. You're a scientist. Since when do you take a vote on scientific fact?
But it wasn't just hometown folks who disagreed with the decision. Just a few days after the vote, this petition signed by hundreds of planetary scientists hit the internet. It says, the undersigned do not accept the IAU definition, and they refuse to use it. Period. The last stop on my journey would be a visit with a planetary scientist who proudly signed that petition. One of the world's leading experts on Pluto, Alan Stern. He's been mad ever since we opened our new exhibit at the planetarium. And he sure isn't pleased with the IAU.
You're late. Ready for this?
Ready as ever. I can't wait to hear what Alan's got to say about Pluto's demotion.
I think that the IAUs confuse people because their definition produces such illogical results. What I really like is what I call the Star Trek test. When Kirk and Spock show up orbiting an object, just by looking at the picture of it, they know it's a planet. In an IAU world, Spock would have to come back and say, Captain, let me survey the entire solar system, determine whatever objects are there, I'll integrate the orbits overnight, I'll get back to you. It's not that hard.
So you don't even care about whether a zone is cleared or some of these other parameters?
No, that's all about location. And location's for realtors, not scientists. I don't think it counts at all in terms of what it means to be a planet.
So then, what is Pluto? According to Alan, it's not just a Kuiper Belt object. It's not a lonely oddball either, and it's definitely not demotable. It's simply a new kind of planet, a dwarf planet, and it turns out there's lots of them.
It looked like the solar system consisted of 4 terrestrial planets, 4 giant planets, and misfit Pluto. But today, instead, we see a solar system with 4 terrestrial planets, 4 freakishly giant planets, and a whole cohort of Pluto-like objects, which turn out to be the dominant class of planet in our solar system. These are typically rocky and icy objects. Many have atmospheres. Many, possibly most, have moons. All the things we're used to in the planets we're familiar with, but in miniature. I think a decent analogy is when you see a Chihuahua, it's still a dog, because it has the characteristics of the canine species, just in miniature.
Why then are these pint-sized planets so much smaller than the rest?
The process of planetary formation is a bottoms-up process. Planets grow from small things to larger and larger things. Dwarf planets were arrested in the mid-stage of planetary growth. They are actually planetary embryos. Pluto and other dwarf planets would have grown much larger had there been more material around them. Why was there no more material for them? That's a great question, and we don't know the answer to it.
Many planetary scientists think that dwarf planets were actually born in another region of the solar system, among the gas giants, where the food supply was plentiful. But as the gas giants grew larger and larger and migrated to their current positions, the force of their gravity flung the tiny dwarfs outward to the Kuiper Belt, where they reside today. While there are thousands of objects in the Kuiper Belt, they're spread millions of miles apart, so far away from each other that the dwarfs no longer come in contact with the material they need to grow.
To study those objects rather than objects that grew to much larger scales will give us a great window into the process of planetary formation.
3, 2, 1. We have ignition and liftoff.
Alan and his team hope to open that window when the New Horizons spacecraft, launched in 2006, becomes the first ever to arrive at Pluto. Racing at a speed of 37,000 miles an hour. Travel time, 9.5 years. Scheduled arrival, 2015.
So, this is the place?
This is Mission Control for New Horizons.
Cool.
Yeah. And the flight control team is monitoring the data that's coming down, looking at the health of the spacecraft, and sending instructions back up to basically choreograph everything that happens on the spacecraft.
So, how long do those instructions take to get there? Like, suppose it says, quick, turn left. Like, how long does that take?
Well, right now, it would take about 2 hours and 12 minutes for the instruction to get up there. And then after it's executed, 2 hours and 12 minutes more for us to find out that's what happened.
To complete the round trip.
That's right.
By the time it gets to Pluto,
it's going to be 9.5 hours.
Round trip.
Yeah.
So you better know well in advance what you're telling this thing to do.
We try to make sure we do that.
New Horizons has 7 scientific instruments, which will study Pluto's atmospheric composition, its surface features, its interior structure, as well as its 3 moons, Charon, Nix, and Hydra.
So it seems to me that New Horizons, with its experiments, will transform this icy ball out there into a world.
It's true first-time exploration. We've never been to a dwarf planet, and I think it'll be as revealing as when we first went to Mars and no one expected craters and river valleys.
All right, so you had enough room for 7 scientific instruments, but I heard like there's more stuff than that.
Well, we've got a few mementos. Perhaps the most sentimental and noteworthy are some of Clyde Tombaugh's ashes.
His ashes?
His ashes. It's on its way to the stars.
The man is on his way back to the very planet he discovered, and he's due to arrive there in 2015.
That's great.
That just blows my mind. I'd challenge anybody to put that on their resume.
Finally, it's time to head back home. But my journey isn't quite over. I have one more thing to do, a promise to keep. When I met Annette Tombaugh, she told me she had never seen our exhibit and asked if she could see it with me. Of course, I agreed. I was a little nervous about inviting Annette to the Rowe Center because this is kind of where the public awareness of the problems with Pluto began.
Oh, I'm excited. I'm really excited about seeing the exhibit. Of course, I am still going to look for Pluto.
And I think what we did here is sensible. So, let's hope this works.
Welcome to New York. It's good to see you. Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the belly of the beast.
I showed Annette where we exhibit the planets. Then I took her downstairs to show her where we put Pluto.
And so, here we have it.
It's there. Okay. I don't see anything wrong with this presentation at all.
So, after 10 years, I can rest peacefully at night.
Yes. I wish it were a little bigger. And a little higher.
So, can I offer you my view? Not that you ask, but I have a view that's been stereotyped, but actually misrepresents my position here. When you look at the richness, this tapestry of information,
we now have about the solar system, what I would vote for is we recognize the true diversity of stuff that orbits the sun and invent a new lexicon commensurate with what our new understanding of the solar system is, because there's no longer just lights moving again in the night sky.
Especially since we've discovered more than 400 planets outside our solar system. Maybe the definition of planet should consider the rest of the cosmos as well.